I wanted to cover some of these, what you might call peculiarities in the election, right? Remember, we talked a little bit about, remember how late on election night President Trump was comfortably ahead? And all of a sudden, about 2 in the morning, many of the swing states just stopped counting ballots. They just stopped. And observers were removed from the counting facilities. And then what we learned later is that the counting continued in most cases. So they claimed they were stopping, they got rid of the observers, and then apparently they kept on counting, and they had different excuses for it. Some places they said, well, people need to go to sleep. Everybody needs sleep. Oh, you remember this from past elections, don't you, how we all needed to sleep at 2 a.m.? No. We always stayed up till the count was finished. That's how it's always been done. And then you had in Atlanta, there was a water main break over the equipment. Oh, my God, we might lose the equipment. When it turns out there actually wasn't a water main break. There was a small leak nowhere near the vote counting equipment. The facilities manager said that was way overblown in the news. Ask yourself why. Who reported that? Where did they come up with that story, right? Somebody told them, there's been a water main break. That was part of a plan. That's what's called a blatant lie. They lied to get people out of there, and they kept counting. When the vote counting resumed, there were statistically abnormal vote counts. Now, this has been analyzed by statisticians. These are huge vote counts. You call them vote dumps. Talking about hundreds of thousands of votes being dumped into the system when the quote-unquote counting resumed. And they had an unusually, just call it unbelievably high ratio of Biden to Trump votes. You're talking about 90% and above. In some cases, 99.5%. And you're talking about maybe 160,000 votes or more. Essentially all for Joe Biden. Statistically, that is nearly impossible, okay? That's nearly impossible, and to have happened in so many different places. And really, it's just the 5 or 6 main cities where the fraud occurred. Milwaukee, Detroit, Philadelphia, Phoenix, and Las Vegas. Those were where the vote dumps happened. Those cities are where Joe Biden allegedly won the election. It's really just those cities.
And it's Dominion software in those 5 cities as well.
You got Dominion all over the place, and we can't even really get to Dominion, but you got to hear some about Dominion. I recommend you go check out the Kraken. And I was joking with some friends last week about the Kraken. I said, enjoy your Thanksgiving Kraken. But just remember, the one thing that Kraken doesn't taste like is chicken. I'm glad you liked that a little bit. I thought that was funny. I thought that was somewhat humorous. Everything tastes like chicken. And I was like, what does Kraken taste like? It doesn't taste like chicken, that's for sure. Sidney Powell, one thing you got to say about Sidney Powell is she's not a chicken. She's standing up. And you got to think that she knows that she's a target. We'll just leave it at that. She's a target of all kinds of things right now. So, Linwood as well. Okay, let's talk some more about things that were peculiar on election night. How about the late arriving ballots in Pennsylvania? 23,000 absentee ballots were returned before they were even sent or on the day they were sent. It's not possible that they were returned on the same day or before they were sent. 86,000 have such extraordinary return dates that they raise questions. Like that would be like the day after it was sent, they received the ballot back. That doesn't make any sense. It takes a little bit of time for the mail to be delivered and then for somebody to fill it out and send it back. Even if they filled it out and sent it back the same day they got it, it probably doesn't go until the next day's mail. So there's a lot of questions. That's almost 100,000 absentee ballots that are highly questionable. They didn't match signatures on mail-in ballots anywhere. The rejection rate on mail-in ballots is unbelievably low this election, much lower than any previous election. And President Obama himself said you have to verify those signatures. Of course, that was back in 2008 before they needed to discard that argument, which is just a reality. You got to verify those signatures or you don't know what you're getting. You're counting ballots from people that aren't the people who are supposed to be voting the ballots. So the Democrat Party knows that. Barack Obama, that's how he won his state Senate election, was challenging some of those mail-in ballots and finding out, yeah, they were fraudulent, and they got thrown out, and then he won, and then he got on the path to becoming the great one that he ultimately became. So they didn't match signatures in this election. That's a big deal. There were missing votes. There were 47 USB cards, and we'll try to get to some clips on that because I've got some good clips that went missing in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. A lot, 50,000 votes on those cards. A lot of abnormalities going on in Pennsylvania. There were a lot of non-resident voters. You know, there's a group out there called Voter Integrity Project that's been analyzing the data, and they've calculated that 20,312 people who are no longer Georgia residents or didn't meet the residency requirements in Georgia voted in the election. Now, Biden's margin of victory in Georgia is a little bit under 13,000 votes, right? So that's a big deal. There were a lot of chain of custody breakdowns where, you know, there was really no one watching the counting. There was no one verifying that the ballots that were being run through the counters were the actual ballots. There was no one checking the USBs that were all over the place. I mean, how hard would it be to slide in some extra USBs or to trade out some extra USBs? And then you had a ton of statistical anomalies, things that just aren't possible in terms of the percentage breakdown. Like in Georgia, with 89% of the votes already counted, President Trump was ahead. But then Biden somehow, for the next 53 batches of votes that were input into the system or counted, just input into the system, Biden led Trump by the exact same statistical margin of 50.05 to 49.95 in every single batch. So how do they all match up just perfectly? Well, let's go to there were a couple of big things that happened last week. There was the filing by Sidney Powell Wednesday evening, which is fascinating. It's 104 pages. I'm going to give you one little piece of it in a minute if we can get to it. It's going to be impossible to cover the whole thing. But suffice it to say, there are major problems in every aspect of this election, from ballot harvesting all the way to the software. But I want you to listen. There was also a press conference in Pennsylvania last week that was a big deal. I want you to listen to this press conference, you know, where Rudy Giuliani was there, Jenna Ellis was there. It was primarily run by Rudy Giuliani. The president was supposed to be there live, but they ended up deciding to hold off on him going there live because Giuliani had been allegedly exposed to somebody with coronavirus, and so they decided to keep the president away, and he called in and did about a 10-minute call-in to the hearing, which was fascinating. But you got to hear about this because, you know, there were about 600,000 votes added in a very strange spike in Pennsylvania. And when this was covered at the press conference, the crowd literally gasped and was actually laughing at it.
To see
Listen to this.
A smooth curve going up, not any big spikes. That's kind of what Greg was talking about, the anomalies of loading and uploading those votes. So that big spike that occurs there is a prime indicator of fraudulent voting.
And that's 604,000 votes in 90 minutes, is that right?
Correct. This is 337 votes, 337,000 votes in that
period of time.
Yes.
And when you look at this entire curve with all these spikes, can you calculate how much of a vote that accounted for Biden and how much for Trump?
Close to 600,000. I think our figures were about 570 some odd thousand that all those spikes represent over time.
For Biden?
Correct.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
Can you believe that? Listen to the crowd. The fix is in, folks.
Just to go back to your original...
The fix is in. Think about it. In these spikes in Pennsylvania, 570 some odd thousand for Joe Biden. How many for President Trump? 3,200? It's just not possible. That's a false vote. They added votes to the system. They fixed this election. They did that in every place that we've talked about. They did it in Nevada. They did it in Arizona. They definitely did it in Georgia. It's so obvious. This is just one example. By the way, there's going to be another one of these press conferences today in Arizona at noon. Now, the mainstream media didn't cover this one in Pennsylvania. There were a bunch of sitting Pennsylvania legislators there at the press conference. In fact, they're the ones, the Pennsylvania House of Representatives and the Senate called this press conference. And, of course, shortly thereafter, of course, Twitter banned the guy who was basically the ringleader among the Pennsylvania legislatures, Colonel Doug Mastriano. How much time have we got, Shriner? Do we have a couple of minutes? I've got a clip that's no, we don't. There goes the music. Well, I wanted to play a clip introducing a guy. We've just got we've got too much audio. We need about 3 hours. Well, we really need more than that to cover all this stuff.
You can stick around during my show if you want. We'll keep going.
So, let's talk about that, Shriner. We've just got too much to cover, and I had a setup clip because I wanted you to hear the number of military officers and particularly military intelligence officers that are testifying in this situation is noteworthy. You have to decide. Do you think these people are just wholesale lying? Do you think they're throwing away their entire lives and their entire careers, all their integrity, for what? For 15 seconds of media notoriety, and the media isn't even covering it. You've got to watch Right Side Broadcasting Network even to see these press conferences. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.